Hello, I'm Kevin Flood, and I produce a blog called Kevin's Corner. Kevin's Corner can be found at kevinflood.blogspot.com. And I blog quite a bit about startup companies and how best to run startup companies, how to launch them, how to continue on, etc., etc., etc. And I've also worked with many startups. And I see a lot of issues that startups face, and it's almost consistent across the board that they all face the same issues. And so I'm running a series of blogs now addressing the common mistakes or misconceptions that startups engage in. And one of them is how they manage and use contractors. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with using contractors. As a matter of fact, most startups will have to use contractors because of cost reasons, or they only have a temporary thing to do here or there in the beginning. But over time, a company needs to be careful about how they use contractors, especially as they transition from an earlier stage to a later stage company. So I'm going to go through some of the issues that most startups usually face with contractors and basically how to avoid them. And the first one is codependency. It's very easy for a startup company to become codependent on a contractor. And for obvious reasons, this is dangerous because a contractor is inherently a temporary employee. And if you become too dependent on a contract, then all of a sudden that contractor becomes disillusioned, or that contractor leaves, or in fact that there's something going on with the business so you can no longer have that contractor. You need to be careful what the implications of that relationship and that contractor leaving would be. And one of the issues is knowledge loss. I've seen this very often, especially from a technical perspective, where a contractor is doing some programming or some design work, and then all of a sudden that individual is gone, and so is all that knowledge in that product. But it's no different. There are operational procedures, there are business relationships that a marketing person could engage in that you want to retain in the company. So before you engage one of these contractors, set out explicit ways that the knowledge will be maintained in the company. It could be another individual who's a permanent employee, or a co-founder of the company is mirroring this individual so they know what's going on. It could be the issue of documentation. In the case of technology, a source control system is an excellent way to maintain knowledge. The other thing is transition plans. Believe it or not, at some point in time your startup may be very successful, and you'll begin to transition to a more stable environment where you want to bring on permanent employees. But you've already started with a contracting staff which is inherently permanent. And don't assume that that contracting staff is just all of a sudden going to convert to full-time employees. In many cases, that's not the situation. So when a contractor comes on board, make sure you understand whether or not they can transition to a permanent employee. And if they can, you need to explicitly state, well, what would the compensation be? What would the stock be? I've quite often seen a contractor ransom a startup company because they were so dependent on him as they grew. The company tried to bring him on as an employee, but he was getting such an awesome and large contracting fee that they refused. And then, of course, the contractor leaves and everything breaks down. So make sure you have, as these contractors come in, will they or will they not become permanent employees? And if they will become permanent employees, what's the deal you're going to have with them, and you all agree to it. Explicitly establish tasks for a contractor to do. It's not uncommon for you to you have a hire, a contractor comes in, you give them a specific task, then all of a sudden they get part of your company in operation, you start giving them all kinds of tasks. That's really not healthy. For one thing, you're piling a lot of tasks on one individual. It could come down to quality issues, it could come down to delivery issues, and the codependency is a real problem. So right off the bat, be very disciplined on what this individual is going to do, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and then basically have an end to that relationship or that particular task that they're doing. And then if you're all satisfied with that, perhaps the next thing to do is add something else. Quality. Quality is not inherently a challenge just because a company has part-time contractors. Startups frequently have quality issues no matter what. They're going very fast. They're trying to create products and services really quickly, and they don't have a tendency to focus on quality, which is a shame, really, because in the end it costs them a lot more and it actually jeopardizes their business. In terms of contractors, it should be part of their contract what quality level of expectation you want from these individuals, and how you measure quality. And that will assure a better product, a better service that comes out, and less conflict that may occur between you and the contractor. Cost. Frequently businesses think that having contractors is going to cost them less. And although that can be the case, I've seen quite the opposite. As a company begins to move along and adds more tasks, responsibility grows, and they have a staff of contractors, the cost of those contractors can be astronomical and be detrimental to the success of a business. So you really need to constrain what the cost is going to be for these contractors. And in the event that you see your company moving on or growing, you need to establish a more permanent base, a more permanent employee base, where you have a set salary for them, benefits or whatever, but some way that you can actually manage your business to a cost and to a bottom line. Team building, this is a bit more esoteric than the other subjects that I talked about or categories, but all companies, whether they like it or not, or whether they are aware of it or not, have a culture, and they're trying to build a team. And what that really means is that there's a set of communication mechanisms between each other. There's an ethical understanding about how people should behave, and there's sort of a way to behave that the company either explicitly or inexplicitly expects from these individuals. And even though you have a contractor, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't understand what those things are all about. Because after all, whether a person is a contractor or not, they're in your company, they are a part of the company, they are a part of the team. Make sure that they are in fact buy into your culture and your ethical code. So in conclusion, there's nothing inherently wrong with using contractors in a startup. As a matter of fact, you may have no choice, but to avoid cost overruns or problems or issues or knowledge loss with contractors, it's good to be aware of those potential challenges going forward and establish processes and procedures for these contractors to avoid those going forward.